something that I tell our employees is we're now a 5-year-old startup embedded inside a 100-year-old airline. One of the most important jobs of a leader is to always make people feel optimistic about the future. And I think that is one of the main jobs of leadership
is optimism.
It can't be naive optimism. It can't be Pollyannish. If people are afraid and worried, and it's toxic. And if you can have people focused on an optimistic future, make them believe in the future. And I also believe in self-fulfilling prophecies, like we're going to do this incredible stuff. And you make it a whole lot more likely by saying you're going to do it.
You know, we did some work on leadership, and one of the aspects of it is great leaders find a way to constantly radiate energy to others.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, my son who was taking chemistry, he's like, "Oh, Dad, like they're exothermic." Yeah. And I'm like, "Okay, great." You know, but it feels like that's a piece to this too. Is in that moment, you're giving that person some energy.
Yeah, and people can feel if you have energy and passion. And another thing I say to, especially young people, and I get asked, but people often confuse management and leadership. Management is about compliance. It's about, did you show up to work on time? Did you do the checklist? And it's really important. But leadership is about inspiration and vision. It's about how you make people feel.
Are you management or leadership?
You know, there's always some mix, but the further you move in the career, you more and more index to leadership. And by the time you're in my job, by the time you're the CEO, like it's 100%.
Yeah.
It's pretty, like, if I'm the one doing compliance checklists, like we've really screwed up. And so it's 100% about inspiration and vision.
The reason I was excited to do this is our organizations have some common history. We're both in our 100th celebrations, and you know, as you know, not many organizations make it to 100, and I know you're now looking forward. What I'm trying to figure out is, what are the things that may change, and what are the stuff that are going to stay the same as you look forward? And maybe we don't know for the next 100 years, but if you took the next decade for United, what are some things you're pretty confident won't change?
Yeah.
And what are some things you think will change?
Well, first what I'd say at United is, one of the things I tell our employees is we're now a 5-year-old startup embedded inside a 100-year-old airline. And really, I think that is coming out of COVID. It gave us a chance to really reset the culture, like across the board. And as I look forward, you know, I think we believe that we're going to drive much of the change. There's a lot of things that are going to stay the same. Unless somebody invents a transporter, doesn't seem likely. We're going to
no Star Trek?
No, I'd love it. It'd be super cool. It'd blow up our business, but it'd be super cool. But how do we make the whole experience something that feels good? And some of that is the onboard experience, having seatback entertainment that's really, you know, have things that are relevant, that give you something to do. I think what will feel more evolutionary to customers is, how do we communicate with you transparently? Like, epiphany for me was a CEO a decade ago, you know, of a, Fortune 50 company told me, like, the one thing I don't like about travel is, like, it's the only time in my life that I'm not in control. I want to tell every customer
the same thing you're hearing.
Exactly what I would hear. Just like one of the other things that I think the best thing I learned at the Air Force Academy is, for life and for business, is no excuses, sir. When you're a cadet, like, it sucks. Like, something happens, it's not your fault, and there's gonna be consequences of it. Someone asks you, you have to say no excuses, sir, and then you have to take the consequences, whatever they are. But God, is it a great lesson. It's so common in the business world for people to, like, make a list of excuses. Oh, the weather. Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, this. Like, all these things that are not my fault. And our chief operating officer actually, he says it slightly different. He says, it may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility.
Our responsibility. I love that. Well, and it moves you back to that mindset of, so what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Right. What's the solution?
One of the ones that we still aren't quite fixed, but it's getting fixed, is Wi-Fi. Like, still one of the things our flight attendants have to apologize for is Wi-Fi. Starlink is going to fix it. Like, everyone on the plane will stream.
We're excited about that.
Yeah, we're going to, and we'll have.
I am, because it helps the productivity of all my folks.
I know. Yeah, they may not be excited. I know. The boss expects them to work now. The boss expects them to work.
There was no Wi-Fi, right? Now it's like, no, Scott told me.
But we'll have half the fleet on Starlink by the end of this year, essentially the whole fleet done next year.
That's fast.
It was like one of the last things that our employees had to consistently apologize for. That's really the way I thought about it. Like, I don't want our employees focused on everything's great, we're going to take care of you. And if they're having to apologize, that doesn't work.
I love that. That idea of, what we know. And so it gives them as much empowering as you can have in a dynamic
Yeah, and what you find too is you have to build technology to do that. Right. And it just has all kinds of other benefits. You're trying to build the technology to communicate, but it winds up having all kinds of other benefits. Like one of the cultural things, this is a different point, but one of the cultural things that's the most impactful, I think, in the last since I became CEO, is every airline has what are called delay codes. So if a flight is delayed, even if it's 1 minute, why was it delayed? There's a code.
Okay.
Was it the pilots? Was it the flight attendants? Was it the
catering,
gate agents, catering? Like what, and they're just like every airline I've been at, they're just wars in break rooms about who, 4-hour fights amongst people about who gets pinned with the delay. And everywhere I've been, like the chief operating officers would say, well, nobody's ever actually accountable for that. This is not about individual accountability. We need the data so we can fix the airline and run the airline better.
Right. Yeah.
And I just didn't buy it. And the first week that I was CEO, said, we're getting red delay codes. It was a cultural point. We did things like we put cameras up. We didn't really call it AI back then, but we've used learning models. And we've avoided all that fighting and time that used to go on. And it was a huge cultural point. But the point of this is when you invest in the right kind of technology, you don't know what all the benefits are going to be.
I loved your idea of a 5-year startup and a 100-year company. In that 5-year time, you've added a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And you've also been innovative, at least from the outside, on the pathways that you can join United.
Yeah.
Everything from cabin attendant to pilot.
Yeah.
How's that going? How are you thinking on the sourcing of talent, the bringing in of talent? Where are you on that journey?
We're not really representative, I think, of most companies or the world in general. The biggest airline in the country, it's one of the few places left, I'm proud of this, that people with a high school diploma can come work as a flight attendant or a gate agent or on the ramp or in tech ops, and with overtime, working hard and, with overtime, and once they get to, the top of the seniority scale, can make 6-digit incomes with great benefits.
That's great.
Buy a house, send their kids to college. There's just not many careers left like that. So I'm proud of that. And so we opened up our flight attendant hiring, and, I don't remember the exact number. We were going to hire, 2,000 or 3,000. And, we have 75,000 applications within a couple of hours.
Wow.
So for us, it's more about how do you find people that have the right mentality and customer service attitude. So it's really about attitude. We can train them to do the jobs, but how do you find people with the right attitude? And how do you build a process to pick the right people, send them through training, keep them excited? It's about keeping people excited. I mean, I say that I have the easiest job of anyone at United because I only have one responsibility: create an airline that our employees are proud of. And the reason for that is because if they're proud, they take care of everything else. And mostly they want you to feel the same way. They want to go, when something goes wrong, whether it's weather or anything else, they want to take care of you and make you feel the same way. If you're proud of something, you want everyone else to feel the same about it. And if you can get them rallied, it is remarkable. It sounds so simple, and it really is so simple. But if you can get a team rallied, they can accomplish wonders. I go down to Houston at least once a month, which is where we do all of our flight attendant training. And I love Disney. I have 7 kids and take the kids to Disney all the time. But Disney is the second happiest place on earth. The flight attendant training center in Houston is number one. Oh. Those people are so excited to be becoming flight attendants at United. And so if I ever have a bad day, I'm going to go to Houston because it'll make me feel better.
Well, what I love is, and also parallel here, we get a lot of applications. I think worldwide we get 1.4 million applications. How do we know we're picking the right folks? And this idea you talk about do folks have the right attitude, the right orientation? It means that you probably rethink, how are you assessing?
Something had happened, we'd have problems with pilots. And so I started a new process, and I said to the head of flight ops, I want you to pick a dozen of our not best technical pilots, but people that everyone likes. And when we would have people come through for the interviews, they would escort them around the building, go to lunch with them, take them to the interviews and stuff. And I told this group, your job is this someone I would like to take a 4-day trip with? That's your job. And if you say no, then they're out. You get a veto vote. It's picking people that care about others, that you want to hang out with, that you want to be with.
And how they act when no one else is looking.
Yeah, and you find out about people in stress. You find out about companies in stress.
Maybe then just on personal operating models, you put a good team in place, you hold them accountable to no excuses, you focus on thinking ahead, and yet, You still lead a global airline. You got to travel. Right? There's always something going on. What's your own personal operating model? How do you make it work? How do you make sure you don't burn out?
Yeah, I'm gonna make you a many of your partners and others. I don't know if angry or jealous.
Well, tell us.
So I have an unusual one. I on my calendar have a rule, a guideline at least, no more than 4 hours of meetings a day.
And you use the other time to think, or
think, or to call people, or just whatever.
Yeah, unstructured.
I read about 3 hours a day on average. Of a pretty unstructured but really efficient with my time. Some of the things are, one, having time to think instead of sitting in meetings where you don't need to be in. But two, I think reading. Like, you need to be a genuinely curious person, reading about a whole variety of subjects.
Wider than
almost anyone.
I've been at McKinsey 32 years, and one of the things I've had a chance to see is the change in how CEOs operate over that period, and sleep, working out every morning, the unstructured time. I think it's changed, and the words I use, I may not be perfect. I think CEOs today treat themselves more like elite athletes.
Another thing I do that people have thought is weird, that my whole career, I will, when I'm in the office, will often take a 20-minute nap. Close the door, take a nap. When I first got to United, people were like, "Oh my God!" It's like, "Where do you take a nap?" I said, "I lay on the floor."
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, we have to get a couch in here." They were all stressed about it.
Can't have it on the ground.
But if I take a 20-minute nap, I've accomplished more in 25 minutes than anyone else would have accomplished in that time. When you're tired, your brain, if you're tired, if you haven't worked, your brain is not 100%. If you're not 100%, you shouldn't be making decisions.
Let me close with some fun ones. We'll do a lightning round.
Okay.
First flight of the day or last flight home?
First. I'm a morning person.
Yeah, me too. We've both spent a lot of time in airports. What's one thing that you've learned by just watching people in airports?
Traveling through an airport from start to finish is stressful. De-stress it.
I love that. Window or aisle seat?
Window, for sure.
And why?
Oh, I love to watch all the places go by, the cities, the rivers, the mountains. My favorite is flying over the Colorado Rockies and trying to pick out each of the 14ers, which is harder from the sky. I mean, it's easy from the ground, but harder from the air to pick them out. Oh, I've been there, I've hiked there. Oh, I've hiked that.
Did you ever think you'd end up a CEO? Was this ever part of the grand plan? Or?
I never had a grand plan. It's actually one of the unusual or different pieces of advice I give people when I ask career advice is don't have a plan. Two pieces. Don't have a plan. And if you're not having fun, do something different.